Hi friends, welcome back. For the past few weeks, I've been exploring some master studies in gouache. But today I wanted to switch mediums and see how well oil pastels could capture the same sense of luminous light that Sorolla is so well known for. So today I'll be recreating one of his beautiful beach scenes while sharing some of the decisions I make along the way. Before starting, I spend a little time choosing the paper. I have this Mungyo pastel pad with several toned papers. And for this particular beach scene, I decide to work on the sand colored sheet. One thing I almost always do before beginning is shortlist my palette. This is especially important in a medium where the tints and tones are varied and you may have too much choice, for example in oil pastels. Rather than searching for colors throughout the painting session, I like selecting everything I need beforehand. To help me decide, I simply place little marks on the sketch that I've already done, matching colors to different parts of the composition. But this is not to say that it's going to be perfect. Some colors change once I begin working. But having a limited palette keeps the painting harmonious and stops me from constantly second guessing myself. This is not so much about the different brands, but the colors that I feel will do justice to this composition. So I narrowed down to about 15 oil pastels. The painting I'm studying today is Strolling Along the Seashore, painted by Sorolla in 1909. This image I'm using is from Wikimedia Commons, where it's available in the public domain. I've linked the reference below, and this master study is purely for educational purposes as I continue learning from one of my favorite painters. So whenever I look at a Sorolla painting, the first thing I notice isn't the figures, it's the light. So I begin with the brightest shapes first, the flowing white dresses. Although we often think of white as just whites, it's seldom ever so. It's a mix of warm creams where the sunlight strikes, or cool greys or warm greys, and violets in the shadow, and subtle reflections bouncing up from the sand. I'm not really worried about details yet, just placing the largest shapes and the biggest value relationships. So the sea itself occupies only a thin strip in the distance. For the parts of the sea which are in the distance, I choose a rich charcoal blue and then layer brighter cobalt blues over it. Slowly, you'll see that the contrast between the cool blues and the warm sand is what makes the whole scene feel sunlit. I follow the same approach for the second figure too. Again, I'm thinking less about the clothing and more about light falling on the fabric. The brightest areas receive a creamy warm white, while the shadowed folds become soft grays and muted violets. One thing I've learned is to trust the process. At this stage, everything looks rather chaotic, and honestly, that's completely normal. The first half of almost every painting feels so awkward, but if the values are working, everything gradually begins falling in place. This is not to say that my work is perfect, but over time, having practiced more and more art, I feel I can see the improvement in my own work. One challenge in this painting was separating the white umbrella from the white dress right behind it. When two objects share almost identical values and sit close to one another, edges become incredibly important. So instead of outlining them, I rely on subtle shifts in temperature, cooler grays, warmer creams, and soft blues to help the forms separate naturally. Now you'll see that the sand colored paper has also helped because any small area left exposed simply looks like a reflected beach light rather than unfinished paper. One of my favorite details to paint was the movement of the dresses and those light diaphanous veils either from the dress or from the sun hat. This is also a small composition and I'm avoiding painting facial features. Instead, I suggest them with just a few carefully placed shapes and values. I also use the same charcoal blue for the hair instead of black. Black would have felt too heavy and unnatural, whereas blue keeps everything feeling luminous. One of my favorite moments was adding the final touches of sunlight to the skin and hinting at those wonderfully transparent veils and gloves. Every time I do one of these master studies, I come away understanding something a little better. Not necessarily how to copy, but how one can simplify shapes, control values, and paint light. So, friends, here's the finished study. Interestingly, the very next day, I felt inspired enough to paint one of my own photographs using the things that I've learned. This time, I worked on a dark blue-gray sheet, and I was pleasantly surprised on how it turned out. This composition is from a photograph of my own home. Tell me in the comments what you enjoy most in these master studies. I'll see you in my next video. Until then, happy painting!